You want to pass your DOL? I'd like you to pass it too. Let's work on that together. First thing you're going to do is you are going to go to Echo. And in Echo, you're going to find your sophomore DOL course. You've been added to this course since sometime back in the early fall, and you've probably been doing a good job of ignoring it. Let's stop doing that. Click on that link, and you're going to end up here. There's not much here beyond this page. This is our landing page where the resources that you need to do the DOL are linked. This is a living document, so as we're tweaking things, as we figure out more about how we should be doing DOL, this is getting updated. But ultimately, we have a chart here with top to bottom the steps that you need to do and pass the DOL. So let's recap what we've already done. We've already done steps 0 and 1. Okay, step 0, before you even really start the DOL, you were prompted, probably in advisory, to create a set of folders in your Google Drive wherein you were to start saving your work. Every time you finished a project, put that project in that folder. Every time you did a DOL style reflection on a project or presentation, you put it in that folder. So that now when we get to the spring and it's DOL freakout time, you know where to go to look for this stuff. If you didn't actually do that, lo siento. That's kind of a you problem, not an us problem. But hopefully you did. And then as last semester went on, we got on to step 1, and that was the class level DOL reflections and or presentations. So at various points in your classes, depending on what class it was, you were prompted to, after completing a project in a class, do a DOL style reflection and or presentation on it. And across all of your classes, when we got to the end of the fall semester, you did a DOL in every class, and it was like DOL extravaganza. So you got a lot of practice. Hopefully you figured out it's not that scary, and you have a lot of stuff that you can draw from to adapt into your current DOL that you will be doing this spring. And on that topic, when are you actually doing your DOL presentations? Well, final DOL presentation, step 5, the end of this. Due date, April 17 to 21, week of April 17 to 21. That is 1 full week after spring break. So you have spring break to rest and or scramble on getting this done. 1 week back at school to put the finishing touches on things, and then you start the presentations. How those are actually going to happen is we're going to have a special class schedule wherein we go through all of our regular classes and we get done with those between 8:30 and about 12:40. Then we have a half-hour lunch. And then starting at 1:15, we start doing DOL presentations. So 1 day of those 5 days, you will be staying after school to do your DOL presentation. Hopefully you pass, and then you're good. And the rest of those days, you just have early release days, and you get to go do whatever it is that you do when you're not at school. What do we need to do between now and then? Well, we need to actually take what you have done on your class level DOL presentations and or what you are doing currently in your classes and prepare your real deal DOL presentation based off of that work. So first, you're going to want to open up the sophomore DOL rubric. It is linked right here. I already have it open. I'm going to go here. The print on this is very tiny, and you can have an easier time looking at this on your screen. And we're going to have a better idea of what exactly is prompted here when we look at our slide template. But ultimately, what I want you to get your head wrapped around is this part down here, okay? Your DOL presentation, well, the presentations that you've done so far in your classes have been about one project for that class. and they might have been individual or they might have been with a group. Your DOL presentation that you'll be doing in April is individual, and you are presenting about 2 projects from 2 different classes. So you cannot do 2 projects from world studies. You cannot do 2 projects from robotics. You can do one project from math 2 and 1 project from world studies. You can do 1 project from media and 1 project from robotics. So you do 1 reflection about 1 project from 1 class and 1 reflection from another project from another class. But then you need to select 2 learning outcomes that you are reflecting on in this presentation that you're really focusing on. So maybe you are really focusing on written communication with a project that you did in world studies. Okay, so you would check that box there. World studies, written communication. Okay, so now your next reflection needs to not be from world studies, and it needs to not be about written communication. It needs to be about agency, collaboration, or one of the knowledge and thinking rubric rows. Whatever you want to do, it's your choice, but it needs to be 2 different classes, 2 different learning outcomes. Mapping them out on this matrix is going to help you make sure that you're not doubling up on something. Now, there are links on here to get to the actual rubrics that you will be reflecting on. Say you want to reflect on written communication, click on that. Okay, written communication is right down here. When you did your class level DOL reflections, your teacher probably said, I want you reflecting on the organization row. You have the freedom to choose which of these rows you want to reflect on. But when you do decide that you want to focus on development, note there are 3 bullet points, like 3 sub-strands of this development row. Focus on one set of bullet points. So if we're focusing on development, maybe we're focusing on background information. So comparing the top bullet point of this row and not worrying about sequence of ideas and controlling idea. We're just focusing on background and context. Trying to do all the bullet points in one of these rows is going to be too much. You're not going to be able to talk about your work in the level of detail that we want if you're trying to address all of the bullet points in a row. You're honing in on one line of bullet points from a given row on these respective rubrics. If you choose to do a knowledge and thinking rubric row, your teachers for those respective classes may have already selected a knowledge and thinking rubric row for you to reflect on when you're doing the class level presentation, and you've already done all this. But if you want to do things a little bit differently, or you want to reflect about something that you haven't been prompted to do a class level DOL reflection on yet, you can find all of the knowledge and thinking rubrics here by clicking on this link. And there are subfolders for the different disciplines. So social studies, something from world studies. Within here are all of the different rubrics that you could click on and then select a row to focus on. Maybe you want to focus on counterclaims because you think you wrote an essay with an excellent use of counterclaims. Okay, so that was a lot. Ultimately, 2 classes, 2 different learning outcomes. No doubling up. We should not see 2 checks in the same row. We should not see 2 checks in the same column. Now on to the actual slides that you need to edit. So these are coming your way via Doctopus. You're going to get an email from Jereb with a link to your copy of the document, and it's just going to say your last name, comma, your first name, sophomore DOL presentation. And that's the set of slides that you're going to edit. You do not make a copy of this. You edit the one that I send you. We are not going to have any patience for your slides being anyplace else. Edit the ones that I send you. So, first slide, you're going to go ahead and put your title in here, maybe your name and sophomore DOL presentation. And then we get on to what we're actually supposed to be doing with the rest of this, okay? So, this second slide is your instructions. You are not going to leave this slide in your slideshow. You are going to prepare your slideshow per the instructions on this slide, and then you will delete it before your presentation. I repeat, delete this slide before your presentation. I don't want to see your slides go up on the smartboard and have you panic clicking through this slide because you forgot to delete it. Delete this slide before the instructions. Okay. So, what you need to do, first step, you need to watch this overview video. Hey, you're already doing that. You can check that off. You need to read through the DOL rubric. I gave you a little bit of preview of it, but you need to actually sit down, open up that link, and look through it. And those links are live on this document. Then you need to click through all of these slides so that you can start wrapping your head around what it is actually you need to do. Then you need to decide, okay, what are the 2 projects that I want to reflect on? What are the 2 ones that I would most enjoy, that I was most into, that I did the best job on? Is probably the best way to go about selecting. But there is one extra factor that's going to influence your decision making that I'll talk about in a few more slides in the future. But again, these could be from DOL presentation reflections that you already did for your classes, or they could be new projects from this semester that you haven't necessarily done that reflection on yet. Though obviously those projects would need to be completed before you actually do the presentation. Now, any slides that you already made and presented from, or any written DOL reflections that you already did, all of that work that you already did, you can borrow from that and adapt it in this slideshow. You can't directly copy and paste those slides into here and have it meet all of the criteria of the rubric. You're going to need to tweak some things, so pay attention, but you can borrow from the work that you have already done. That is why we already did that work, was to prepare you for this. Then ultimately you are going to be editing these slides, this exact set that was shared with you, not a copy you made yourself. On each slide, there's going to be instructions, prompts. Oh, dear. Okay. This is far too far into the video for me to start re-recording. Sorry, Google signed me out. Okay, we were on slide number 2. Here we go. Again, you're going to be editing these slides. On each individual slide, there are instructions, prompts. You will need to edit those. We should not see text that was exactly as it was on the template, still on your final slides. When you get to a slide, it may ask you to do something and you might think, that's a little too much for me to do on one slide. Okay, add more slides as needed. You can, on a given slide, you can right click on it and duplicate slide, and then you got 2 slides to work with to get the work done. You can adjust the theme or visual design of these slides to your taste. I gave you guys a blank slate design-wise, just white with black and gray text. Adjust it to your taste and your personality, but also know your audience and know professional standards and know your audience's perception of what professional standards are, and play it safe. Okay. Don't go too far out there. But then you're going to want to add definitely on many of these slides visuals and other multimedia as is prompted or appropriate to the task. You'll see more about what exactly that entails later on. When you have done all the work of editing this, you need to go back and look at that DOL rubric again and evaluate. Okay, am I actually meeting the criteria that rubric calls for? And then, before your actual presentation, you need to delete this slide. One more thing, okay? There's a section down here when you're in the editing mode of slides called speaker notes. This is a great place to plan and draft out what you plan to say. This stuff above here, that's what you want your audience to see. It is not what you are going to say exactly. They are different things. You can have bullet points up here that are shorter, and then your longer, more elaborate spoken text is down here. Okay? Some of your potential audience members are not fans of overly crowded slides and aren't going to want to see a wall of text on your slides. They're going to want to see some bullet points, and then they're going to want to hear you saying that wall of text. So on to the actual slides that you'll edit. Okay, so let's take this in. No, this is good. So first, you are going to introduce yourself to your audience. They might know you, they might not. You will definitely have some strangers in your audience. There will definitely be some students that you might not know, but there will be some outside adults that you don't know. And so you can't assume that we know you. You got to introduce yourself to us. And you want to introduce yourself to us in a way that connects to the content of the rest of the presentation, which is showcasing what you've learned and how it's preparing you for what comes next. So we need to know a little bit more about where you come from and where you're going. After you go over this, just introducing yourself part, and there's some prompts here to help you think about things that you could do here. There's 4 bullet points for ideas. This is not a checklist. These are just suggestions, and you could do one of these. I've seen people try to do all 4 of them as if there's a checklist. That's not what it is. But introduce yourself and then pivot to, okay, now you know a little bit of who I am. Here's who I want to be. I have this goal. This is what I want in my life. This is what I want to do after high school. I am preparing for a future as a video game designer, as a content creator, as a medical professional. Whatever it is, that's your goal. I'm preparing for a future. Describe what it is, what you want to do, and then connect back to what you're doing in school. I'm preparing for a future in game design by developing proficiency in coding and developing the collaboration skills necessary to work in a collaborative industry, such as game design. Okay, you're connecting ultimately to what you're going to be discussing in your 2 project reflections and the learning outcomes that you'll be talking about there. So maybe it's some content knowledge relevant to your field, science if you're going into med, media or programming content knowledge if you're going into game design or content creation, so on and so forth. And no matter what career you end up in, you're going to need collaboration skills. You're going to need agency, and in a lot of them you might not realize it, but you're really going to need written communication skills, because you're going to need to communicate with people through writing, no matter your profession. And those are going to be vital skills to be developed, and so you can make the case for a connection. But ultimately, you're going to be showing that you are growing in those learning outcomes, developing those skills to set you up towards achieving the goal. Again, this whole section, this background hook slide, if you need more slides, add them in. But try to get this whole section done in 1 to 2 minutes. And then you go on to your reflections, okay? So say, talking about a career in Game design, maybe the first project that I'm going to be reflecting on is something that I did in Wong's class. And I will be reflecting on Wong's design rubric. Okay, so these slides are going to look fairly familiar. These are going to be very similar to what you've done on those class level DOL reflections. This is where there's going to be a lot of overlap. So you got to contextualize. You're not presenting necessarily to the teacher who took you through the project. You're going to be presenting to other teachers. You're going to be presenting to other students. You're going to be presenting to outside guest adults. So you got to give us sufficient context. What class was this for? What's the driving question? Look at the entry document if appropriate. What were you asked to create? Describe the steps that you took to create the project. Document with visuals as much as possible. Okay, right now, if you're working on a podcast in world studies, be taking some screenshots of different stages of your work along the way on that project document. When you get to actually editing the audio, be taking some screenshots or screen captures of you actually working with the audio program. Save those in your DOL folder for this purpose. And then make sure this point gets across, okay? If the project had a driving question, make sure that you cover how did you answer the driving question? What was your group's thesis in response to the driving question? And how does whatever it was that you made actually communicate or prove that answer? Or if you were given a problem to solve by creating a product for a class, how does what you made actually solve that problem? You are probably going to need more than one slide for this, noted. Then you need to make sure that you actually showcase the product itself. On the previous slides, you're supposed to be documenting your steps to the product. Now you need to have the actual product. Depending on the product, there's going to be different ways to showcase it. If you build a robot, we should have some playable video of the robot actually doing the thing. If you don't know how to embed video, embedded on this slide is a playable video that shows you how to embed a video in your Google Slides. You can also embed audio. This will be useful for those of you doing podcasts. And you can also think about, okay, I can have the whole product here, but then also it's a good idea to have excerpts. Maybe a 1-minute clip of a video that you made. Maybe a 1-minute clip of a podcast that you made. That will be playable as part of your presentation itself to let your audience really understand and digest what it is that you made. If what you made was visual, it should be here. If what you made was some sort of Google file document, there should be a screenshot of it and it should be linked here. And after you've showcased and discussed your product, then we need to really dig into the reflection piece. Okay, so you've showcased it all, talked about your process through it, and now you're self-evaluating on one of the chosen rubrics. Here is a link to a folder with all of the rubrics that you might be choosing from. Here are those the agency rubrics: collaboration, knowledge thinking, oral communication, written communication. And then back here we have our narrative rubric that we've been using in our humanities classes. We've got the video rubric that is being used in media. We've got the computer science pathway rubric, so on and so forth. But when you did these class level reflections, frequently your teacher had identified one specific row that they wanted you to be reflecting on, and they put it on the slide for you. And you did that thing with the ovals, okay? On this template, that's not there. You need to either borrow that from the DOL work that you already did in another class, or you need to go and get those screenshots and make that all happen yourself. But again, want to emphasize, you're focusing on one particular bullet point from one of those rows, not the entire row. And you need to connect to why getting very good at that one particular thing was necessary to doing a good job on the project overall. You rate yourself. You might want to show some images, evaluating, improving your evaluation. Okay, if you're talking about agency problem solving, and you went through multiple drafts of some code, have some screenshots of the code at various points in the process to show that. Don't just say that you did it, show us. Okay, and then at the end of this all, you just proved that you grew, that you demonstrated agency or computer science knowledge and thinking or collaboration skills or written communication. And that is vital to your career as X, Y, or Z thing, your intended career future as X, Y, or Z thing. You need to, as you're wrapping up reflection on Project 1, Class 1, make sure that you connect back to, remind us, hey, by doing the podcast in world studies, I grew in my oral communication skills, which is going to help me in my intended career as a content creator where blah, 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 blah. You connect what you did back to your stated goal. Okay. Then we have that set of slides repeat again, but about Project 2, which is going to come from Class 2, which is going to be about Learning Outcome 2. But it is all still connecting back to your goals, your desired future, and how you are using high school as an opportunity to make progress towards that goal. Then on our conclusion side, you wrap it all up. You remind us about who you are. And we just listened to you talk about Reflection 2. You got to remind us again about Reflection 1 and how you are growing in those 2 learning outcomes and how those are helping you progress towards whatever your intended goal is. And then you thank the audience. And that's it. And then we ask you some questions. Then we ask you to step outside. After you sweat it out outside for a few minutes, we talk over what went well, what didn't, and we make our decision. Do you pass? Do you not pass? And if you did not pass, what do you need to do about it? Then we call you back in and we let you know that either you passed or you didn't pass, and here's what you need to do to make it right. And the whole thing's over in about a half hour. And then you get to move on with your life until senior year. Okay, so this video is linked up here. And if you have any questions, I will be back in your advisory. And you always know where to find me during period 5-6. Thanks, guys.